Have you ever wondered what secrets lie buried beneath the very streets you walk on every single day? While you're rushing to work, grabbing coffee, or meeting friends, you're literally walking over ancient mysteries that have been hidden for centuries. Some of these discoveries are so incredible that they've completely rewritten history books. Others are so bizarre that scientists still can't explain them today. Right now, beneath major cities around the world, there are entire lost civilizations waiting to be discovered. Underground chambers filled with treasures that would make kings jealous. Ancient temples that predate anything we thought was possible. And in some cases, archaeological finds so disturbing that governments have tried to cover them up completely. But here's what makes this even more fascinating. Most of these discoveries happened completely by accident. A construction worker digging a foundation, a homeowner expanding their basement, a city planner laying new subway tracks. None of them expected to stumble upon mysteries that would challenge everything we thought we knew about human history. In this video, I'm going to reveal 7 of the most mind-blowing ancient mysteries that have been discovered buried directly beneath our modern cities. These aren't just random artifacts or old pottery. We're talking about massive underground complexes, lost technologies that shouldn't exist, and evidence of civilizations that supposedly never existed in the first place. I've spent months researching these discoveries, diving deep into archaeological reports that most people never see, interviewing experts who've worked on these sites, and uncovering details that will absolutely blow your mind. By the end of this video, you'll never look at your city the same way again. You'll start wondering what incredible secrets might be hiding just a few feet beneath your own neighborhood. But before we dive into these incredible discoveries, let me tell you why this matters so much more than you might think. These aren't just interesting stories from the past. These underground mysteries are actively changing our understanding of human civilization right now. They're proving that ancient peoples were far more advanced than we ever imagined. They're showing us that major cities have been continuously inhabited for thousands of years longer than we thought possible. And in some cases, they're revealing technologies and knowledge that we're still trying to understand today. So get comfortable, because what you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about the ground beneath your feet. Let's start with the most incredible discovery of all. Deep beneath the bustling streets of modern Istanbul, construction workers were doing routine excavation for a new shopping center when they broke through into what they thought was just another basement. Instead, they had stumbled upon one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the past century. What they found was an entire underground city that had been perfectly preserved for over 1,500 years. This wasn't just a few rooms or a simple cellar. This underground complex stretched for miles in every direction, with multiple levels descending deep into the earth. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Perfectly carved stone corridors led to massive chambers that could hold hundreds of people. Intricate ventilation systems still functioned after all these centuries. Fresh water still flowed through carefully engineered channels. But here's where it gets really interesting. The deeper the archaeologists went, the older the construction became. The upper levels showed clear Byzantine architecture from around the 6th century, but the lower levels revealed construction techniques and styles that were far, far older. Some sections appeared to date back over 2,000 years, and at the very bottom, they found chambers and passages that didn't match any known architectural style from any known civilization. The most mysterious part of all was a series of sealed chambers that required months of careful work to open safely. When they finally broke through those ancient seals, they discovered something that left even the most experienced archaeologists speechless. Room after room filled with artifacts that shouldn't exist. Stone tablets covered in scripts that no linguist could translate. Metal objects forged from alloys that modern science couldn't identify, and carved reliefs depicting technologies that ancient peoples supposedly never possessed. One chamber contained what appeared to be a massive stone mechanism with intricate gears and calibrated measurements. Another held thousands of small clay tablets, each one inscribed with complex mathematical formulas that would have been impossible for people of that era to understand. And deep in the lowest level, they found a circular chamber with walls covered in star charts so accurate that they matched modern astronomical data with precision that should have been impossible without advanced telescopes. The Turkish government immediately classified most of the findings. The construction of the shopping center was quietly moved to a different location. And today, only a small section of this underground city is open to the public, while the vast majority remains sealed off and heavily guarded. But Istanbul isn't the only city hiding incredible secrets beneath its surface. Let me take you to the heart of London, where routine maintenance on the London Underground led to one of the most puzzling discoveries in British archaeology. Transport workers were expanding a tunnel section near the Tower Hill station when they noticed that their drilling equipment kept hitting something harder than expected. When they investigated, they found themselves looking at a perfectly preserved Roman wall. But this wasn't just any Roman wall. It was part of a massive complex that extended far beyond anything that historians knew existed in ancient London. As archaeologists were called in to study the find, they quickly realized they were dealing with something extraordinary. This wasn't just a building or even a group of buildings. It was an entire underground district that had somehow been completely forgotten by history. Street after street of perfectly preserved Roman structures, complete with shops, homes, and public buildings that had been sealed away for nearly 2,000 years. The level of preservation was unprecedented. Wooden furniture still sat in place. Glass windows remained unbroken. Even organic materials like leather and textiles had survived in remarkable condition. It was like stepping back in time to experience daily life in Roman London exactly as it had been left. But the most intriguing discovery came when they found the central building of this underground district. It was a massive circular structure unlike anything else in Roman Britain. The walls were covered in inscriptions that mixed Latin with symbols that scholars couldn't identify. The floor was decorated with a complex mosaic that seemed to depict a map of some kind, but not of any known geography. In the center of this circular chamber stood a stone pedestal that had clearly once held something important. Whatever had been placed there was long gone, but the pedestal itself was carved with measurements and calculations that were far more advanced than anything Romans were known to possess. The mathematics involved concepts that wouldn't be discovered in Europe for another 1,000 years. Even more puzzling was the discovery of a series of underground tunnels that connected this Roman complex to other locations throughout London. These tunnels were engineered with a precision that impressed modern engineers. They maintained perfect grades for drainage, incorporated advanced ventilation systems, and were built to withstand the test of time in ways that exceeded even contemporary construction standards. Following these tunnels led to even more surprises. They connected to natural cave systems that had been extensively modified and expanded. Some of these caves contained evidence of human habitation that dated back thousands of years before the Romans ever arrived in Britain. Others held chambers filled with artifacts from cultures that historians insist never existed in ancient Britain. One tunnel led to a vast underground chamber that contained what appeared to be an ancient library. Stone shelves lined the walls, and while most were empty, some still held scrolls and codices in various states of preservation. The few documents that could be safely examined contained texts in languages that linguists are still trying to decode. Some appeared to be scientific treatises. Others looked like historical records of events that don't match any known timeline of British history. The British Museum quietly took control of the site and has been conducting research there for years. Most of their findings have never been made public. The few details that have leaked out suggest discoveries that would fundamentally change our understanding of ancient British history and the capabilities of pre-Roman civilizations. But perhaps the most shocking discovery came when researchers realized that this underground Roman district was built on top of something even older and more mysterious. Deep beneath the Roman foundations, they found evidence of a civilization that predated known British history by thousands of years. This earlier civilization had constructed their own underground complex, using techniques and materials that modern archaeologists struggle to explain. The stonework was so precise that modern tools couldn't replicate it. The engineering was so advanced that contemporary experts are still trying to understand how it was accomplished. And the artifacts found in these deepest levels suggest a level of technological sophistications that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient peoples. The implications of these discoveries go far beyond simple historical curiosity. They suggest that human civilization is far older and far more advanced than we've ever imagined. They indicate that major population centers have been continuously inhabited and continuously built upon for millennia longer than our history books suggest. And they raise profound questions about what other secrets might be lying beneath our feet in cities around the world. Now, Let me take you to a discovery that happened right beneath one of America's most famous cities. And what they found there will make you question everything you think you know about pre-Columbian North America. In downtown Seattle, city planners were preparing to install a new fiber optic network when their excavation equipment broke through into what they initially thought was a natural cave system. But as they explored further with cameras and lights, they realized they were looking at something that shouldn't exist according to conventional archaeology. What they had discovered was a massive underground complex carved directly into the bedrock beneath Seattle's Pioneer Square. The precision of the carving work was immediately obvious. These weren't natural caves that had been modified. These were purpose-built chambers and corridors that had been excavated with tools and techniques that left perfectly smooth walls and mathematically precise angles. The size of the complex was staggering. Initial surveys revealed over 40 chambers connected by a network of tunnels that extended for miles beneath the downtown area. Some of these chambers were enormous, with vaulted ceilings that rose over 30 feet high. Others were smaller and more intimate, clearly designed for specific purposes that archaeologists are still trying to understand. But here's what made this discovery so controversial. The style of construction and the artifacts found within these chambers suggested they were built by Native American peoples thousands of years before European contact. The problem is that conventional archaeology insists that the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest never developed the advanced engineering and construction techniques that would have been necessary to create something like this. The chambers contained evidence of sophisticated metallurgy, including copper and bronze objects that displayed craftsmanship rivaling anything produced in Europe at the time. There were stone tools made from materials that don't exist naturally anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, suggesting extensive trade networks that archaeologists didn't know existed. And there were carved reliefs and pictographs that told stories completely different from the oral traditions that have been passed down through local Native American tribes. One chamber in particular caught the attention of researchers. It contained what appeared to be an ancient workshop where precision instruments had been manufactured. Stone tables held partially completed tools that showed evidence of advanced mathematical planning. Metal implements suggested knowledge of alloys and forging techniques that weren't supposed to exist in pre-Columbian North America. And most intriguingly, there were partially completed devices whose purpose modern experts couldn't determine. The pictographs covering the walls of this workshop chamber told a story that didn't match any known Native American mythology. They depicted people working with technologies that looked suspiciously like advanced machinery. They showed detailed astronomical observations that required instruments more sophisticated than anything attributed to indigenous peoples. And they contained mathematical concepts that weren't supposed to be discovered for centuries. As news of the discovery began to leak out, the response from the academic establishment was swift and decisive. The site was quickly sealed off. Access was restricted to a small group of approved researchers, and a campaign began to downplay the significance of the findings and discourage media coverage of the discovery. The official explanation given to the press was that the chambers were natural formations that had been slightly modified by indigenous peoples for storage purposes. The sophisticated artifacts were dismissed as examples of post-contact Native American work that had somehow ended up in older archaeological contexts. And the pictographs were explained as modern additions that had been added by urban explorers or graffiti artists. But researchers who had actually examined the site firsthand tell a very different story. The construction techniques were far too advanced to be explained by conventional theories about pre-Columbian Native American capabilities. The artifacts showed clear evidence of great age and couldn't possibly be post-contact creations. And the pictographs were clearly ancient, showing wear patterns and weathering that would have taken centuries to develop. More disturbing was the discovery that this Seattle complex was not unique. Ground-penetrating radar surveys revealed similar underground structures beneath other major cities throughout the Pacific Northwest. Portland, Vancouver, and Spokane all showed evidence of extensive subterranean complexes that had never been officially acknowledged or investigated. The pattern was consistent across all these sites. Advanced underground construction that predated European contact by thousands of years. Artifacts that suggested technological capabilities far beyond what conventional archaeology attributed to indigenous peoples. And pictographs and carvings that told stories completely different from accepted historical narratives. But the most shocking revelation came when researchers began to notice connections between these Pacific Northwest discoveries and similar findings that had been made in other parts of North America. Underground complexes beneath cities in the Midwest showed remarkably similar construction techniques. Artifacts found in sealed chambers beneath East Coast cities displayed the same advanced metallurgy and precision craftsmanship. And pictographs discovered in subterranean sites across the continent told variations of the same mysterious stories. What emerged was evidence of a continent-wide civilization that had existed in North America thousands of years before Europeans arrived. This civilization had possessed advanced engineering capabilities, sophisticated metallurgy, extensive trade networks, and astronomical knowledge that rivaled anything in the ancient world. They had built massive underground complexes beneath what would later become major population centers. And then, for reasons that remain completely mysterious, they had vanished, leaving behind only their buried cities as evidence of their existence. The implications of this discovery network are staggering. If authentic, these findings suggest that North American indigenous peoples had developed advanced civilizations that were systematically destroyed or forgotten during European colonization. They indicate that the history taught in schools and universities is fundamentally incomplete, and they raise profound questions about what other evidence of advanced pre-Columbian civilizations might be buried beneath cities across the Americas. Yet, despite the potential historical significance of these discoveries, most remain sealed off from public view and excluded from mainstream archaeological discourse. The few researchers who have tried to publish papers about these findings have found their work rejected by academic journals. Conference presentations on the subject have been canceled, and careers have been quietly destroyed for pursuing research into these underground mysteries. This pattern of suppression and denial extends far beyond North America. Similar discoveries have been made beneath cities around the world, and in almost every case, the response from established institutions has been the same: deny, downplay, and bury the evidence rather than confront the implications of what these discoveries might mean for our understanding of human history. But the evidence keeps accumulating, and the truth is becoming harder to suppress. With each new accidental discovery, with each construction project that breaks through into hidden chambers, with each underground complex that refuses to stay buried, we get closer to understanding the real story of human civilization. And that story is far more complex, far more ancient, and far more incredible than anything our history books have ever dared to suggest. The question isn't whether these underground mysteries exist. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what we're going to do with that evidence, and whether we're brave enough to let it change our understanding of who we are and where we came from. As we delve deeper into these suppressed discoveries, we need to examine what might be the most controversial finding of all. Beneath the ancient cobblestones of Prague, Czech Republic, construction workers renovating the city's historic underground were following standard protocols when their equipment detected unusual hollow spaces far below the known basement levels of the old city. What they uncovered defied every assumption about medieval European construction capabilities. The workers had broken through into a vast subterranean complex that stretched beneath Prague's most famous landmarks. But this wasn't another Roman settlement or medieval foundation. The architectural style and construction methods were unlike anything in European archaeological records. The chambers they discovered were built using massive stone blocks that had been cut and fitted with tolerances that modern stonemasons struggle to achieve. Each block weighed several tons, yet they had been positioned with mathematical precision that created perfectly stable structures without any mortar or binding agents. The engineering required to transport and position stones of this size in underground locations would challenge contemporary construction crews with modern equipment. But the true mystery lay in the age of these structures. Initial dating attempts using standard archaeological methods produced results that made no sense according to established European history. The construction appeared to predate known Roman settlements in the region by over 1,000 years. Yet, the sophistication of the engineering suggested a level of technological advancement that historians insist didn't exist in ancient Europe. The chambers themselves told a story that contradicted everything taught about early European civilization. Room after room contained evidence of advanced scientific knowledge. Stone tablets covered with astronomical calculations that demonstrated understanding of planetary movements with accuracy that wouldn't be achieved again in Europe until the Renaissance. Metal objects forged using techniques that required temperatures and alloy knowledge supposedly unknown to ancient peoples. One particular chamber contained what appeared to be an ancient laboratory. Stone benches held the remains of glass vessels that had been manufactured with clarity and precision rivaling modern laboratory equipment. Chemical residues suggested experiments with compounds and processes that weren't rediscovered in Europe until the 18th century. And carved into the walls were formulas and diagrams that looked suspiciously like early chemistry and physics equations. The most disturbing discovery came when researchers found evidence that this Prague complex was connected to similar sites throughout Central Europe. Ground-penetrating radar revealed tunnel networks that linked underground chambers beneath Vienna, Budapest, and Krakow. These tunnels maintained consistent engineering standards across hundreds of miles, suggesting a coordinated construction effort that would have required massive resources and advanced planning capabilities. Following these tunnel networks led to discoveries that challenged fundamental assumptions about ancient European society. Beneath Vienna, they found chambers filled with maps carved in stone that showed geographical knowledge extending far beyond Europe. These maps depicted continents and ocean currents with accuracy that required navigation techniques supposedly unknown to ancient peoples. Some maps showed land masses that matched modern satellite images of areas that Europeans wouldn't officially discover for another 1,000 years. The Budapest section of the network contained what appeared to be an ancient archive. Thousands of metal plates had been inscribed with text using writing systems that bore no resemblance to any known ancient European scripts. Linguists brought in to examine these inscriptions found themselves confronted with languages that followed grammatical rules, unlike anything in the Indo-European family. The few symbols that could be tentatively translated suggested scientific and philosophical concepts that weren't supposed to emerge in European thought until much later historical periods. But perhaps most shocking was the discovery beneath Krakow of chambers that contained evidence of advanced metallurgy and engineering that surpassed anything attributed to ancient European civilizations. Workshops held the remains of tools and machines that had been constructed using precision manufacturing techniques. Metal components showed evidence of casting and machining that required industrial capabilities supposedly not developed until the modern era. The artifacts found in these workshops defied easy classification. There were gear systems with tolerances that matched modern precision manufacturing. There were metal alloys that combined elements in proportions that required advanced understanding of chemistry and metallurgy. And there were partially completed devices whose purposes remained completely mysterious to contemporary experts. European governments moved quickly to control access to these discoveries. Research was restricted to approved institutions. Publications were limited to carefully vetted academic journals, and a systematic effort began to reinterpret the findings in ways that didn't challenge established historical narratives. Official reports described the sites as examples of medieval construction that had been misdated due to contaminated archaeological contexts. The advanced artifacts were explained as Renaissance or early modern objects that had somehow ended up in older archaeological layers. But researchers who had examined the sites before official control was established told very different stories. The construction techniques were demonstrably ancient, showing wear patterns and geological changes that required centuries or millennia to develop. The artifacts displayed clear evidence of great age, with oxidation and mineral deposits that couldn't be faked or misinterpreted. And the engineering capabilities demonstrated in these underground complexes exceeded anything that medieval Europeans were supposed to possess. More troubling was the realization that these Central European discoveries were part of a much larger pattern. Similar underground complexes had been found beneath major cities throughout Europe, and in each case, the response from established institutions followed the same script: deny the significance of the findings, restrict access to the sites, and suppress research that might challenge conventional historical narratives. London's discoveries weren't limited to the Roman complex we discussed earlier. Beneath the modern financial district, construction crews had uncovered chambers that predated Roman occupation by centuries. The engineering was even more advanced than the Roman structures, using construction techniques that modern experts couldn't explain. Artifacts found in these pre-Roman chambers suggested technological capabilities that historians insist didn't exist in ancient Britain. Paris held similar secrets beneath its famous landmarks. During renovation work at the Louvre, crews discovered underground chambers that contained evidence of advanced ancient French civilization. The artifacts and construction techniques suggested that the peoples who built these chambers possessed scientific knowledge that wouldn't officially be rediscovered until the Enlightenment. Yet carbon dating and geological evidence clearly placed the construction thousands of years before the Christian era. Rome itself, despite being one of the most extensively excavated cities in the world, continued to yield surprises that challenged established archaeological understanding. Beneath the known Roman ruins, deeper excavations revealed evidence of even earlier civilizations that had possessed engineering capabilities that exceeded those of the famous Roman Empire. These earlier peoples had built underground complexes using construction methods that modern engineers study. To understand how such precision and durability were achieved without contemporary tools and machinery. The pattern extended beyond Europe into Africa, where similar discoveries beneath Cairo and Alexandria suggested that ancient Egyptian civilization was far more advanced and far older than conventional Egyptology acknowledges. Underground chambers contained artifacts and inscriptions that indicated scientific and technological knowledge that contradicted established timelines of human development. The precision of the construction and the sophistication of the engineering suggested that ancient African civilizations had achieved levels of advancement that historians have been reluctant to acknowledge. In Asia, discoveries beneath Beijing, Delhi, and Tokyo revealed evidence of ancient civilizations that possessed technological capabilities rivaling those found in European sites. The consistency of construction techniques and artifact types across such vast geographical distances suggested either extensive ancient trade networks or a common source of advanced knowledge that had been shared among ancient peoples worldwide. Each new discovery added pieces to a puzzle that mainstream archaeology seemed determined to ignore. The evidence suggested that human civilization was far older, far more advanced, and far more globally connected than conventional history admits. Ancient peoples appeared to have possessed scientific knowledge, engineering capabilities, and technological sophistication that wouldn't officially be achieved again until the modern era. Yet, instead of embracing these discoveries as opportunities to expand human knowledge, established institutions consistently responded with denial, suppression, and attempts to reinterpret findings in ways that preserved existing historical narratives. Researchers who pursued investigations into these underground mysteries found their careers threatened, their funding eliminated, and their work excluded from mainstream academic discourse. The suppression wasn't limited to individual researchers. Entire archaeological sites were sealed off from public access. Government agencies classified findings that should have been matters of public scientific interest, and media coverage of these discoveries was systematically discouraged or discredited through campaigns that questioned the competence and integrity of the archaeologists involved. This pattern of institutional resistance raised profound questions about the nature of historical truth and the willingness of established authorities to acknowledge evidence that challenged their fundamental assumptions. If these underground discoveries were authentic, and the evidence strongly suggested they were, then human history was far more complex and far more remarkable than anything taught in schools and universities. The implications extended beyond simple historical curiosity. These discoveries suggested that ancient human civilizations had achieved levels of scientific and technological advancement that modern society was only beginning to approach. They indicated that knowledge and capabilities had been lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout human history, and they raised the possibility that contemporary civilization might not represent the pinnacle of human achievement, but rather one point in a much longer cycle of advancement and decline. But perhaps most importantly, these underground mysteries demonstrated that truth has a way of surfacing, despite attempts to bury it. With each construction project, each accidental discovery, each sealed chamber that refuses to stay hidden, more evidence emerges of humanity's true history. The question facing us now is whether we'll have the courage to embrace that evidence and allow it to transform our understanding of who we are and what we're capable of achieving. The secrets buried beneath our cities aren't just artifacts from the past. They're keys to understanding our future potential and our place in the larger story of human civilization. And that story is far more incredible than anything we've ever dared to imagine. The most recent discovery that's sending shockwaves through the archaeological community happened just last year beneath the streets of Mexico City. Workers expanding the metro system thought they were dealing with typical urban construction challenges when their boring machines suddenly broke through into what they assumed was a sinkhole. What they found instead has forced experts to completely reconsider everything they thought they knew about pre-Columbian Mexico. The cavity they discovered wasn't a natural formation at all. It was a precisely engineered chamber that had been sealed for over 800 years. But this wasn't just another Aztec foundation or Teotihuacan remnant. The construction techniques and architectural style were completely unique, unlike anything found at any known Mesoamerican site. The chamber itself defied conventional understanding of ancient Mexican engineering capabilities. The walls had been carved from solid volcanic rock using methods that left surfaces smoother than modern diamond cutting tools typically achieve. The ceiling featured a complex dome structure that distributed weight so efficiently that not a single crack had developed despite centuries of earthquakes that had damaged buildings throughout the city above. But the real mystery began when archaeologists started examining the artifacts found within this sealed chamber. The objects they discovered suggested technological knowledge that shouldn't have existed in pre-Columbian America. There were metal implements forged from alloys that required smelting temperatures higher than anything ancient peoples were supposed to achieve. Glass objects displayed optical properties that indicated understanding of light refraction and lens manufacturing that wasn't developed in Europe until the Renaissance. The most puzzling discovery was a series of stone tablets covered with mathematical calculations that used numerical concepts supposedly unknown in the Americas before European contact. These calculations dealt with astronomical phenomena, but with a level of precision that required observational instruments more advanced than anything attributed to ancient Mesoamerican civilizations. One tablet in particular caught researchers' attention because it contained what appeared to be engineering specifications for mechanical devices. The diagrams showed gear ratios, lever systems, and hydraulic mechanisms that demonstrated understanding of physics principles that weren't formally described until centuries later. Yet, the tablet showed clear evidence of great age, with mineral deposits and weathering patterns that would have taken hundreds of years to develop. Even more intriguing was the discovery of a sealed alcove within the chamber that contained organic materials preserved in conditions that had prevented decay. Textiles woven from fibers that didn't match any known plant species displayed dye techniques that produced colors more vivid and permanent than anything achieved by known pre-Columbian methods. Wooden objects had been carved with precision that indicated use of metal tools far more advanced than the copper and bronze implements typically associated with ancient Mexican civilizations. The preservation was so remarkable that even paper-like materials had survived intact. These documents were covered with pictographic writing that bore similarities to known Mesoamerican scripts, but included symbols and grammatical structures that linguists couldn't decode using conventional translation methods. The few passages that could be tentatively interpreted suggested historical narratives that didn't match any known Aztec, Maya, or other indigenous accounts. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of the Mexico City discovery was what happened when researchers attempted to date the artifacts using standard archaeological methods. The results were completely inconsistent with established timelines of Mesoamerican development. Some objects appeared to be far older than any known Mexican civilization. Others showed evidence of manufacturing techniques that weren't supposed to exist anywhere in the Americas before European contact. The inconsistencies became even more pronounced when researchers realized that this underground chamber was connected to a network of tunnels that extended throughout the ancient center of Mexico City. These tunnels had been carved with the same precision as the chamber itself, maintaining perfect grades for drainage and incorporating ventilation systems that still functioned after centuries of abandonment. Following these tunnels led to discoveries that challenged fundamental assumptions about ancient Mexican society. Additional chambers contained workshops where precision instruments had been manufactured using techniques that modern craftsmen struggled to replicate. There were laboratories where chemical processes had been conducted using equipment that demonstrated understanding of metallurgy and material science supposedly unknown to pre-Columbian peoples. One workshop contained what appeared to be the remains of optical instruments. Lenses had been ground from crystal with precision that required understanding of geometric optics. Mirror surfaces had been polished to reflectivity levels that matched modern standards. And there were partially completed devices that looked suspiciously like telescopes or other astronomical observation equipment. The implications were staggering. If authentic, these discoveries suggested that ancient Mexican civilizations had possessed scientific and technological capabilities that rivaled or exceeded those of contemporary European societies. They indicated that the technological gap between Old World and New World civilizations at the time of contact had been vastly overstated by conventional history. Yet, once again, the response from established institutions followed the familiar pattern of denial and suppression. Access to the site was quickly restricted. Research was limited to approved investigators. And official statements began downplaying the significance of the findings and offering alternative explanations that preserved conventional historical narratives. The Mexican government classified most details about the discovery. International archaeological organizations distanced themselves from researchers who attempted to publish papers about the findings. And media coverage was systematically discouraged through campaigns that questioned the authenticity and significance of the artifacts. But the Mexico City discovery was just the most recent in a series of similar findings that had been made beneath cities throughout Central and South America. Underground complexes beneath Lima, Peru, contained evidence of engineering capabilities that exceeded anything attributed to the Inca Empire. Sealed chambers beneath Bogota held artifacts that suggested advanced metallurgy and precision manufacturing among pre-Columbian Colombian peoples. And discoveries beneath cities in Brazil revealed construction techniques and technological sophistication that challenged assumptions about ancient Amazonian civilizations. The pattern was consistent across the Americas. Advanced underground construction that predated European contact by centuries or millennia. Artifacts that demonstrated technological capabilities far beyond what conventional archaeology attributed to indigenous peoples. and systematic suppression of research that might challenge established historical narratives about the technological capabilities of pre-Columbian civilizations. This suppression extended to discoveries made in other parts of the world as well. Beneath major cities in Australia, construction projects had uncovered evidence of ancient Aboriginal engineering that contradicted assumptions about indigenous technological development. The precision of stone cutting and the sophistication of construction techniques suggested capabilities that mainstream archaeology was reluctant to acknowledge. Similar patterns emerged from discoveries beneath cities in Africa, where underground complexes revealed evidence of advanced ancient civilizations that possessed scientific knowledge and engineering skills that exceeded conventional historical expectations. The consistency of construction techniques and artifact types across such diverse geographical locations suggested either extensive ancient trade networks or common sources of advanced knowledge that had been shared among ancient peoples worldwide. In the Middle East, discoveries beneath cities like Damascus and Baghdad revealed evidence of civilizations that predated known historical timelines by thousands of years. The engineering capabilities demonstrated in these underground complexes exceeded anything attributed to ancient Mesopotamian or Persian civilizations. Artifacts suggested technological sophistication that wouldn't officially be achieved again until the modern era. Each new discovery added to a growing body of evidence that human civilization was far older, far more advanced, and far more globally interconnected than conventional history acknowledged. Ancient peoples appeared to have possessed scientific knowledge, engineering capabilities, and technological sophistication that had been systematically underestimated by mainstream archaeology. Yet, instead of embracing these discoveries as opportunities to expand human understanding, established institutions consistently responded with resistance, denial, and attempts to suppress or reinterpret findings in ways that preserved existing historical paradigms. The pattern was so consistent across different countries, cultures, and time periods that it suggested a coordinated effort to prevent certain types of archaeological evidence from reaching public awareness. This institutional resistance raised profound questions about the nature of historical truth and the willingness of established authorities to acknowledge evidence that challenged their fundamental assumptions. If these underground discoveries were authentic, and the mounting evidence strongly suggested they were, then human history was far more complex, far more remarkable, and far more advanced than anything taught in educational institutions or presented in mainstream media. The implications extended far beyond academic curiosity. These discoveries suggested that modern civilization might not represent the pinnacle of human achievement, but rather one point in a much longer cycle of technological advancement and decline. They indicated that knowledge and capabilities had been lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout human history, and they raised the possibility that ancient human civilizations had achieved levels of scientific and technological sophistication that contemporary society was only beginning to approach. But perhaps most significantly, these underground mysteries demonstrated that truth has an irrepressible tendency to surface despite systematic attempts to bury it. With each construction project that breaks through sealed chambers, each accidental discovery that reveals advanced ancient engineering, each underground complex that refuses to remain hidden, more evidence emerges of humanity's true technological and scientific heritage. The secrets buried beneath our cities aren't just relics of forgotten civilizations. They're proof that human potential has always been far greater than we've been taught to believe. They're evidence that our ancestors possessed knowledge and capabilities that we're still struggling to understand and replicate, and they're keys to unlocking possibilities for human advancement that we've barely begun to explore. The question facing us now isn't whether these underground mysteries exist. The evidence is overwhelming and continues to accumulate with each passing year. The real question is whether we'll have the courage to acknowledge what this evidence means for our understanding of human history, human capability, and human potential. Because beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered, lie the answers to some of humanity's greatest questions. Who were we? What were we capable of? And what might we become if we finally embrace the full scope of our ancient heritage? The ground beneath your city may seem solid and familiar, but it's actually a thin layer covering mysteries that could change everything we think we know about ourselves. And those mysteries are closer to the surface than you might imagine. So here we are, standing at the edge of a revelation that could reshape everything we thought we knew about human history. From the sealed chambers beneath Istanbul to the precision-engineered complexes under Prague, from the advanced workshops hidden beneath Seattle to the mysterious laboratories found under Mexico City, the evidence is undeniable. Our ancestors weren't primitive cave dwellers struggling with basic tools. They were sophisticated engineers, advanced scientists, and master builders whose capabilities rivaled and sometimes exceeded our own. But this isn't just about ancient history. This is about us right now, today. Every time you walk down a city street, every time you step into a subway station, every time you pass a construction site, you're walking over proof that human potential has always been extraordinary. The question isn't whether these discoveries are real. The question is what we're going to do with this knowledge. Because the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep it's buried or how hard institutions try to suppress it. With each accidental discovery, with each construction project that breaks through into hidden chambers, we get closer to understanding who we really are and what we're truly capable of achieving. The secrets beneath our cities aren't just archaeological curiosities. They're a mirror reflecting our own untapped potential. They're proof that the human story is far more incredible than we've ever dared to imagine. And they're waiting just beneath our feet to change everything we think we know about ourselves. The ground you're standing on right now might be hiding the next great discovery that rewrites history. The only question is whether we're brave enough to dig deeper and find out what other mysteries are waiting to be uncovered in the ancient world buried beneath our modern lives.